Brother of Mine by Dezace. Rating, teen and up audiences. Archive warning, creator chose not to use archive warnings. Categories, F/M. General. Fandom, One Piece. Relationships, Monkey D. Luffy and Portugas D. Ace and Sabo. Portgas D. Ace and Sabo. Phoenix Marco and Portgas D. Ace. Portgat D. Ace and Whitebeard Pirates. Koala/Sabo. Implied. Characters, Portgat D. Ace. Sabo, Monkey D. Luffy. Phoenix Marco. Thatch. Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. Whitebeard Pirates. Koala, Monkey D. Dragon. Monkey D. Garp. Additional tags, ASL Brothers. Protective, Portgas D. Ace. Badass Sabo. Minor Koala/Sabo. Portgat D. Ace is a dork. Banter. Sibling bonding. Pre-canon. Alternate universe, canon divergent. Injury. Ace ships Koala and Sabo. He wants them together already. The Whitebeard Pirates meet Sabo. Summary. Every single day on the Grand Line is surprising. The Whitebeard Pirates knew that. But they didn't expect a noble to appear on deck, and one of their siblings to know this man. Or a wild Sabo appears. Author's notes. Before you guys get confused, Sabo doesn't forget and goes back to Dawn after a week. Ace slammed down a shot glass and laughed after beating yet another person in arm wrestling. There were groans in disappointment and cheers in tandem. Ace hearing the shuffling of berries being exchanged. Ace stood up and bowed, a shit-eating grin on his face. Ace ducked a thrown piece of paper, getting booed. Ace smirked, not letting it get to him. He did get a couple of people in debt, but it was their fault for being bad gamblers. The Whitebeards loved to party, and Ace loved to make his strength known. That resulted in betting on if a person could beat Ace. Not one could, or if there was one, they haven't challenged Ace yet. Ace's stature was deceptive. He had large muscles, but he didn't have a lot of mass. But he made up for it with pure strength. The only ones who could give him a run for his money are his brothers, and probably Pops, but he was busy drinking and didn't bother. Ace looked around curiously, seeing no other challengers. He walked up to the spectacles and gave a gimme motion. A wad of berries appeared on his hands, and he fanned his face with the cash, smirking. He smelled the cash and grinned at the circle of people. Love the smell of money in the morning. Shut the fuck up, Commander. Love the sound of losers, too. Ace scampered off before he could get hit with more damaging things. Even though the smile didn't leave his face, he cackled in his throat while counting his acquired bounty, licking his thumb to count the bills. It was a good haul. Once he counted the stack of bills, he stuffed it in his pants pocket. The Whitebeards have an unspoken rule of no stealing from crew members, but loose change on the ground was a different thing altogether. You couldn't prove the money was yours if it was around with nothing to say it was yours. Ace looked from the crow's nest, the calmest place on the ship at that moment. He was sitting back to the mast and was crossing his legs. He stood up, doing what he wanted while out of sight. He was about to climb down when he noticed a decrease in noise, and that set off his alarms. Whitebeard's partying were anything but quiet. He looked over the edge of the crow's nest, trying to see why it was so quiet. He spotted a spot near the edge of the Moby, nearing the railing of the ship, where there were barely any people, but crew members were like they were surrounding someone. He saw Marco's blonde hair and blue shirt. Ace squinted, then his eyes grew wide. Fuck, he knew that hat. Sorry for the interruption, but may I board your ship? Marco held in a flinch and snapped his head to the speaker, someone he did not recognize. There was a person sitting on the railing who proceeded to step onto the ship, not even waiting for an answer. It was a man who wore a blue tailcoat with a white dress shirt under it. He had a top hat with goggles on the brim. Marco saw the ear-length blonde hair, along with a burn scar over the left eye. There was a pipe on his back. Marco didn't retreat, but he did put down his cup and got space between himself and the intruder. The nearby crewmate noticed Marco's actions, and whispers started to be whispered. The crewmates created a space that made a more pirates notice. Marco narrowed his half-lidded eyes, observing the man. The man didn't move from his spot, with the only movement of his eyes determining his tension. If Marco wasn't experienced as he was, He would have thought the man was relaxed as can be. But the twitch in the man's hands and the subtle change in his breathing showed the man's true feelings. He wasn't scared, which was odd since he boarded an emperor's ship, but he was still tense. The thing was that Marco recognized him, or recognized the man through knowledge, not from the bounty poster. This man looked exactly like the rumors of the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, the right-hand man of Dragon, the most wanted man in the world. The chief was whispered to be strong and ruthless, with no pity or empathy for the countries he had a hand in destroying. No one knew his name, all but a phantom in the eyes of the world government. More mysterious than even Dragon. At least they had Dragon's name, but for the chief, they had nothing on him. Marco settled his feet, hands at his side, but ready to fight at the drop of a hat. "Why, pray tell, is the right-hand man of Dragon come to find us? We don't have anything to do with the Revs, yoy." The man tipped his hat and grinned, and Marco noticed his eyes were dark and couldn't get a read on them. "You recognized me. Not many do. And I do know your crew has nothing to do with us." "Then why are you here, yoy?" The chief opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Marco heard loud footsteps. He didn't want to turn his head to the potential enemy, but he knew if he did anything, his crewmates would attack. Marco glanced over his shoulder, seeing the orange hat of his fellow commander push through the crowd. Ace got in front of the circle and huffed out a breath. Marco was about to speak when he noticed Ace staring at the chief with an unreadable eyes. "What the fuck?" Marco didn't hear it as a question. Ace stepped forward to the man, passing Marco, who tried to stop him, but only shook off his grip. Marco glanced at Ace and noticed the chief shuffling his feet in what could be nervousness. "Hey, Ace, fancy seeing you here." Marco blinked and looked in between the two. Ace came to the blonde's side, frowning, but he wasn't on edge around the revolutionary. If anything, he was relaxed. They knew each other, and Ace trusted him, which was surprising since Ace didn't trust easily. Marco had no idea how they knew each other. "You're a load of shit. What are you doing here?" Ace huffed, frown still on his face, appraising the blonde with narrowing eyes. The blonde shrugged, making Ace narrow his eyes more. "I can't come to visit you?" Ace cocked his head and raised an eyebrow, disbelief on his face. "You can, but I know this is not your usual method of operation, especially not in front of my crew. I know your boss wouldn't appreciate it." Ace scrunched up his face while talking about Dragon, a dangerous life in his eyes at the leader of the army. The chief half smiled, making Ace mask his emotions. "You still don't like Dragon, do you?" Ace scoffed, getting into Blonde's personal space. The blonde didn't even back up. "Why ask a question you already know? You know what he did. He apologized. Like I give a shit, he's still on my shit list." "Ace, it's been years." "Yeah, so? He may not be high on my shit list as he was in the past, but he's still on it." The chief sighed, but looked like he expected Ace's words. Marco was more focused on the fact that Ace knew Dragon personally, and knew him enough to dislike him, and knew him for a long time too. Marco focused back on the scene when Ace touched the chief on the chest, frowning. The blonde flinched imperceptibly, but Marco and Ace caught it. Ace hissed through his teeth, quickly going to the blonde's side, grabbing an arm and throwing it over his shoulder, supporting the blonde. The blonde sagged, legs trembling. "Sabo, what's going on?" Ace's voice to another quality worry. Marco saw Ace's eyes look at the blonde with concern. The blonde grinned and coughed. Blood started to seep out of his mouth, trickling down the Rev's chin. Marco noticed the name. Sabo. That was the chief's name. "I really am sorry about this. You were the closest person I could trust. I didn't want to make trouble for you." Ace readjusted Sabo, supporting him better. He was scowling, but visibly worried. "You idiot. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're telling me who did this to you and if they're still alive to roast." Sabo chuckled wetly, blood still going down his chin. "How could I have thought you would say anything different? They're dead, by the way. It took them down, even though they got a few lucky hits." Ace scoffed. "Yeah, just a few. They must have been tough to do this much damage to you." Sabo frowned, the first negative expression he had on his face. He grimaced, something Ace didn't miss. He narrowed his eyes, and Sabo shifted his gaze. "Hostages. They had child hostages." "Shit." Ace mumbled that, but it was loud enough for Marco to hear. "God damn it, Sabo. How did you get this far by yourself in this state?" Marco squinted his eyes, focusing on the white dress shirt. When Ace threw his arm over the shoulders, the coat moved. Marco saw a red spot growing larger on Sabo's side, something he wouldn't have noticed if the coat hadn't shifted. Ace was scowling and started to walk to the ship's infirmaries, since he wasn't about to go somewhere else with an injured person. Sabo stumbling along. Marco would have said some words about this if Ace wasn't so worried for the revolutionary. I was not that far. Was a pain to row here, though. You're fucking stupid. I thought you were supposed to be the smart one. Hey! Ace ignored Sabo's annoyance, making his way through the deck. Marco watched him go to Pops, who was watching with a careful eye. Ace appeared in front of Pops. Sabo tried to straighten up, but got glared at by Ace. Ace looked at Pops and shifted his feet. Hey, Pops, is it okay for Sabo to get some medical attention? Pops raised an eyebrow. I want to know how you know the second in command of the revolutionaries. I can decide then. Ace sighed, but looked at Sabo, who only nodded in agreement. Ace sighed again, and set his face in determination. This is my idiot brother Sabo. Sabo waved his hand in greeting, hiding the small flinches of pain at the movement. Hello, Captain Whitebeard. Sorry for the disturbance. Ace scoffed. Gotta be polite, huh? Well, I'm sorry. One of us has to. I remember hearing all sorts of rumors about your first few months on the Moby Dick. Where did all the Makino's lessons go? Ace set his mouth in annoyance, but didn't disregard Sabo's words, which Sabo looked smug at. Marco, to himself. Brothers. Ace didn't mention any brothers, but he also didn't talk about himself a lot. And of course, his brother is the right-hand man of Dragon. Still, I'm sorry about this. Didn't want to make trouble for you with your new crew. Ace sighed and looked away from Sabo. Stop apologizing. I would rather you come here for me for help and not die in a ditch somewhere. Sabo smiled a little, face relaxing. Pops looked between them and laughed. Go get your brother some medical care. Ace brightened and smiled brightly. Thanks, Pops! He half-carried Sabo down the deck towards the medical bay, and Marco looked at them until they were down the stairs. This was about to get interesting. Ace was sitting at Sabo's bedside while he got his stitches done without fuss. Or, well, not that much fussing. Sabo's shirt was off, and Ace could see the bruises and wounds his shirt was hiding. Sabo was always good at disguising his pain, but when he didn't have to, he turned whiny, which was very annoying. Ace, can I just go to sleep now? I'm fine. Ace smacked Sabo on the back of his head. He wouldn't have done that if Sabo hadn't gotten confirmation that he didn't get hit on the head, so it was all good. Sabo grunted and looked at him with betrayal in his eyes. Ace tilted his head, not giving an inch. Sit there and get your damn stitches, dumbass. But it's so boring. Like I care. Why are you being so mean to me? Because you deserve it. Why do you sound like Koala? Ace slowly started to smirk, and Sabo banched, realizing his mistake. How is Koala doing lately? She's fine, now shut up. And Sabo threw one of his pillows at Ace's face, but he caught it and gave a shit-eating grin. Sabo gave a defeated groan, and Ace cackled. I would think so. She is the one who wears the pants in the relation. Shut up! And I wanted to know if anything changed between the two of you. You're so full of shit. What? I'm just being a good big brother, I am. You are only a few months older than me, and it counts. And I want to know if you're getting together with my future sister-in-law or not. If anything, if you take too long, she'll do it for you. Ace, we aren't like that. Yep, I totally believe that. I watched the two of you interact, and it's not platonic, my guy. Well, I do believe you guys are brothers witnessing this, yoy. Ace jumped in his chair, twirling around to see Marco leaning against the doorframe, grinning. Ace felt blood rush to his face, embarrassed he didn't even notice the man. Sabo leaned his head to the side and waved once he saw the pirate blocked by Ace's body. Marco nodded to Sabo's greeting, dragging over a folded chair from the wall. The nurse, who stitched up Sabo's side, bowed to Marco and left the medical room. Marco set up the chair and sat by Ace's side, crossing his arm with an easygoing grin. But Ace also saw the curiosity, and Ace sighed, sliding back into his hospital chair. Sabo was fiddling with his pipe, which was by his bedside. Hey, Marco, what you doing here? Marco leaned his head to the side at Ace's question, eyes burrowing into his skull. Curious, and before you say anything, I am the lesser evil. Haruta is frothing at the mouth just thinking about asking her brother what he knows, Yoi. Ace grimaced at the mention of Haruta. Haruta is perfectly sane, but once something activates his mystery radar, he goes off the rails. Ace had to hold him down one time because he was sure something was wrong in the News Goose articles. What are you curious about? Sabo looked at Marco with narrowed eyes, his revolutionary training taking over. Ace shook his head at the paranoia, but Sabo might think it was well-deserved. He didn't know Marco. Marco's lidded eyes looked at Ace and back to Sabo, unreadable. Ace never told us that he had brothers, Yoi. Sabo looked at Ace, and he shrunk down in his chair. Ace crossed his arm and tucked into his chest. It didn't come up. Sabo looked at Marco, ignoring Ace. He scooted around the bed, trying to find a good position. I'm guessing Ace activated his bad habit of not talking about his past. Marco nodded, while Ace was insulted. He scowled at Sabo, who only faced him. You do it too! Yeah, because I have to. I'm a revolutionary. We aren't supposed to talk about ourselves. I don't ignore questions from my coworkers if they want to know something about me, but you completely shut people out if they even ask. Okay, this isn't about me. Ace glared at Sabo, who only raised an eyebrow, but Ace knew it wasn't anywhere near done. Anyway, I have 2 brothers and one of them is this asshole. I'm charmed by your care. I'm glad you appreciate it. Marco raised an eyebrow. 2? Should we be expecting another one to turn up, Yoi? Ace shook his head. Nah, not for a couple years. He shouldn't be setting sail for another 2 years. Sabo grinned. But you will certainly notice him when he does set sail. He's a whirlwind, so he should turn up in front of your captain sooner or later. Would probably try and fight him like this idiot. Ace pouted. It was a good idea at the time. Ace, whenever you think it's a good idea, immediately assume it's not. Marco laughed at their banter, making Ace groan. He should never have gotten these 2 in the same room. It'll be a disaster. Marco stopped laughing, a slight smirk appearing. I'm surprised Ace hasn't talked about you guys before. You seem close, Yoi. Ace shrugged, mildly uncomfortable with the line of questioning. Sabo looked at Ace for a split second and responded to Marco. Ace tries not to mention anything unless it's brought up, which is surprising considering the army has been more active lately. Thought he would have mentioned something since I'm the number 2 of the army. I didn't want to bring up anything unnecessary. You're a fucking idiot. If anything, I'm surprised you didn't take the chance to curse out Dragon. Ace huffed. It was tempting, I can tell you that. Marco looked at Ace. What do you have against Dragon, Yoi? Ace and Sabo shared a look, mentally communicating with their eyes. Sabo opened his mouth. Do you trust these guys? I joined their crew. So got it. Ace scrunched up his face to that, but Sabo continued now looking at Marco. Marco looked curious, crossing his legs, invested in what Sabo was about to say. I met Dragon about 8 years ago after my boat was shut down. He rescued me, and it took a week for me to wake up and convince him to take me back home. Thought he was dead for that week, not forgetting that. Okay, I apologized for that multiple times. Still not forgetting. Anyway, I got back to our home island and sought out my brothers, which I did, with Dragon looking after me because I was an injured 10-year-old who couldn't see out of one eye and had a couple broken bones. I met up with my brothers, and that was that. But it turns out there's a reason Dragon got out of there so fast after he dropped me off. When Ace and Luffy's grandfather, he's your grandfather too. I don't claim him. He's not my grandfather. He's fucking crazy. Got me there. When he came and noticed my everything, he asked what happened. I explained, and he went ballistic. It was so scary. It turns out Dragon is our little brother's father. He hasn't seen him since he was a baby and didn't even say hello. Of course, that pissed us off, so when he came back to check up on me, we made him talk to our brother, who didn't even care. Luffy didn't even give a shit, but we made Dragon talk to him. He apologized and went on our way. Marco blinked, Sabo's words going through his head, trying to make sense of it. Ace had been trying to do that for years and failed to do so. Ace gives Marco his sympathy. Their past was a clusterfuck. Marco leaned on his knees, hands together in a praying motion, pointing at Ace with his hands. So you don't like Dragon because he didn't say hi to your brother, Yoi? You got it in one. Ace waved goodbye to his brother, who was being dragged off by his ear. Koala came to pick up Sabo, and Ace watched gleefully when she berated Sabo for having no room to make his argument. Koala waved goodbye, a smile on her face, while subtly hissing at Sabo through gritted teeth. Ace loved that woman. Sabo would miss out if he didn't get his shit together. And here I thought you weren't connected to any organization before us. Ace looked to the side to see Thatch blinking at the sight of Sabo yowling like an alley cat. Did you not think I had connections? Thatch looked at Ace with zero doubt on his face. Ace, your first reaction to almost everything is murder. You tell me who you're connected to with that attitude. Do you want it alphabetical or chronological? Ace! Author's notes. This just appeared in my head, so I wrote it. It was just something to write. Comments and kudos are very much appreciated. Reader's notes. Please give the author comments and kudos. It's such a cute story. And, thank you for listening. Hope you all are having a good day.